we are very concerned with our safety of our learning environments. After some of the major tragedies that have happened in our country, and even in our own state over the past few years, students would like to know how they are being protected while at school. What will you do to make our school and other schools across Connecticut safer?
Thank you for the question, Karan. I will tell you that we have already done some significant things to make students safer. In the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy, we made sure to appropriate a significant amount of school security money and made it available to all the municipalities throughout the state of Connecticut. So, and Farmington is the beneficiary of a significant amount of that security money for security upgrades for all the schools, all the elementary school, middle school, and high school here in Farmington. So that's already been done. And if more needs to be done, it will be done. And the second thing that I will take some credit for is for voting in favor of, again, in the wake of the tragedy in Newtown, I voted in favor of probably the most sensible and most stringent gun safety legislation in the country. I am proud to say that I did that, and I think that's going to be significant in addressing your concerns.
Yeah, so one of the things that we recently did with the help of the state is we got a grant. I believe it was a $3 million grant, and this affects our higher education institutions throughout the state. And it is a new system that allows police departments within the communities where our institution resides to access the security cameras as well as have apps on their phones to access the administrators in case of a crisis or emergency on those campuses. Now this is something that we can leverage for our public schools. Now we're already putting this into the Farmington Police Department because we have Tonsas Community College in our town. Now if we just get an additional grant, we can leverage this in our public schools here and help secure our schools here.
All I can say is that's a great idea, and I would be happy to assist with that effort. That's fine.
We're in agreement.
All right, so the next question goes to Mr. Forrester. While I was driving to school this morning, my what should be a 10-minute commute turned into a 25-minute drive because of the congestion of traffic on Route 4, a rather common occurrence for myself and for many other students and members of the community. If we do not address this issue of traffic, which is a problem for other towns around the state as well, it will only get worse. How would you fix traffic and infrastructure in Farmington at the state level, possibly including the high school renovation project?
So I'll first address the traffic on Route 4. So we just put a lot of work into fixing the Route 4 right around the entrance of our town. I think a lot of people probably could say that the leaving town has improved significantly, but coming back into town is still a struggle, and you could arguably say it's probably worse. Right now we have an ordinance on the books that limits roads to 3 lanes coming through a village. One of the misnomers is that we can restrict development or growth by simply restricting the size of our roads, and I think that's inaccurate. The fact is we are where we are. We are growing as a town because of the strong leadership and proper fiscal management of our town. And so we have to look at ways to allow the state to open up that gateway and allow cars to free to flow. Because now we're talking about quality of life issues, as you mentioned, traveling to and from work.
I would agree with most of what Chris said. The town of Farmington worked with the state of Connecticut, but worked under some constraints, and the constraints were that we didn't give permission or agreement to the state to widen the road in any way. So when you say fix the traffic problem, but don't change the width of the road or don't make any substantial changes, you can't really make a whole lot of progress. So I guess it's fair to say the state did the best that they could with what they were given to work with and the restrictions that were imposed upon them. There was a second part to your question.
Yes, the second part focused on infrastructure in Farmington and possibly the high school renovation project?
Oh, well, as far as the high school renovation project is concerned, my job as a state legislator is to make sure we get as much reimbursement money as possible once the town comes together and decides on the plan that they want to go forward with for the high school. Reimbursement is key, and I will make sure that we get all that we're entitled to.
So I'm glad Representative D'Amico touched on the reimbursement. So when the last project was put to vote, we were limited to a 19% reimbursement rate. As far as I'm aware, there was no effort by our state delegation to put in special legislation to increase that reimbursement rate and reduce the impact on our community. We can do more to advocate for our community. We can advocate for a higher reimbursement rate, put in special legislation, work for our community, and reduce the burden on our property taxes.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about this issue of renovation to the high school, because as most of you in this room are aware, and I think most of the public is aware, there was a group in this town who worked quite strenuously last year to defeat the high school renovation. And that group used some questionable tactics and made some assertions that were somewhat misleading. Now, I think that it is both hypocritical and disingenuous, really, for any political candidate who supported that particular group in any way to claim to be in favor of education, pro-education, or a friend of education.
Thank you. And now we will move on to our remaining two questions. This next question is for Mr. Forster. So the state Supreme Court ruled this January against the plaintiffs in CCJEF v. Rel and deferred to the legislature to address the socio-economic gap in education. What do you believe the General Assembly should do to address educational inequity?
Well, I think, the regionals, the magnet schools is a big part of that. And funding, again, prioritizing our funding on education in our communities. We have to look at what's happening in our cities and see why we're struggling. But if you look at the funding in our cities, they spend more per pupil than a lot of the surrounding towns. So money is not the issue. We have to look to building up our economy, because a strong economy is better educational attainment. A strong economy is stable family structures. This is what helps enable people to focus on their studies, to improve their position educationally. So it's a bigger issue than just moving funding around or regionalizing. We can look to ways to share services across school districts and look for ways to expand how we spend our money on administrative services.
The issue of educational opportunity is a vexing one, and it's been vexing us for years here in the state of Connecticut. As the saying goes, your educational opportunity shouldn't be limited by your zip code, and unfortunately, for too many years, that has been the case in Connecticut. That if you live in a particular town, in a particular zip code, you're going to get either a superior education or an inferior education based on your town's ability to provide that education. That's why we instituted the education cost sharing program in the first place. It factors in many factors, including the wealth of a community, the per capita income within that community, the amount of the number of free and reduced price lunches that are available to the kids in that community. So there are many factors that go into the ECS formula. It needs to be reworked, it needs to be upgraded and updated, but the point is, kids in Connecticut should get adequate and equal educational opportunities regardless of the wealth of their community, and that's what we are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I would agree, and the ECS program is a very successful program. But at the same time, every community needs support for education. It's more than just one area or one district. Hartford spends 200 times, or gets 200 times what we get in ECS grant. It's a significant amount. Like I already mentioned, it's not about just throwing money at the problem. There are serious issues within our community and our society that we have to address and focus on in order to improve educational attainment.
Well, Hartford does get more ECS money than we do. That's not a surprise and that's not news. It's also not a surprise and it's not news that Hartford has all kinds of problems that the people in Farmington can't even imagine. Hartford's property, taxable property, approximately 50% of it is off the tax rolls because it is owned by the state of Connecticut. So they already started at a disadvantage right there in the amount of taxable property and their tax base. The other significant factor is the per capita income. Now, I agree with my opponent that money isn't everything, but it sure is pretty significant when it comes to providing adequate educational opportunities. So to compare Farmington or any other relatively affluent community to Hartford, it's not fair, and you can't compare the two. So again, that's why we had this system set up in the first place, this ECS system, to make accommodations for the inequities in wealth within the communities in Connecticut.
This next question is for Mr. Forster. Oh, this next question will be, it's for Mr. D'Amico. Yeah. So 2018 marks the 4th year that Tesla has been pressing the General Assembly to pass a bill that would allow them to sell its vehicles directly to consumers in Connecticut. If re-elected, will you vote for this bill in the 2019 session? Why or why not?
Well, as with all bills, I never give my commitment to vote for or against the bill until I see how it is written and how it is structured. Because as the saying goes, the devil is in the details. Now, I understand that Tesla has been desirous of using their model to sell cars within Connecticut for several years. I understand, their frustration. However, we do have a dealer model set up here in the state of Connecticut. It's been in existence for many years, and my only concern is that we be fair to everyone. I don't think that it's right to allow one particular company to have special privileges that other companies are not entitled to. So again, that's not saying that I'm going to vote yes. It's not saying I'm going to vote no. I want to see how this bill is structured, if in fact we do have a bill, on that issue this year.
Yeah, so generally speaking, based on how you frame the question, I would support that. I think that we are moving in a different direction on car manufacturers and how they reach their consumers. This is something I was for. Again, I agree with Mike D'Amico that the devil is in the details. It's something we definitely would have to look at. But generally speaking, based on how you framed it, I would agree.
Well, I don't have much to add except that, again, surprise, surprise, Chris and I agree on one thing. The world is changing, technology is changing, and perhaps models and rules that were set up 60 years ago need to be upgraded. I will acknowledge that. But again, we need to be fair to everybody and treat everybody equally. And we'll see how this legislation is structured if in fact we do end up with legislation proposed this year.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
And now, once we have completed the question and answer phase of the debate, and we'll move on to closing statements. So, Mr. D'Amico, you will be giving the first closing statement, and you have 2 minutes to do so.
Well, I don't know what to say except thank you to people in this room and to the people of the 21st District, the town of Farmington. You have honored me with serving you for 7 years on the town council, for 6 years in the legislature, and I say this in all sincerity, it is the honor of my life to be able to work at both of those jobs. Someone told me a long time ago that when you are elected to a position in any capacity, high, low, or in between, people are putting their trust in you, they are putting their faith in you, and it really is a big deal. So I consider it to be a big deal, a high honor, and a great privilege to serve the people of the town of Farmington, and I always have. I can promise you that whether we agree or disagree, I will always listen to what everyone has to say. I think that has been my trademark in my political career. I listen to everyone. I try to make myself available. I go door to door at election time because I really truly want to hear what people have to say. It makes me a better representative. It makes this type of government, this democracy that we have, it makes it flourish even more. So I am honored and proud and hope to be able to continue in this capacity for another 2 years. The one thing that I would say to the students who are here is please consider a career in public service. It is gratifying, it is challenging, but ultimately it is something that you will never regret. So please consider a career in public service. If you are so inclined, you will not regret it, and you will be serving your community in a way that benefits all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. You've seen two very different candidates tonight. I want to be state representative to represent our community, not to represent Hartford. I'm the only candidate up here tonight who is focused on the right priorities and has the right experience to address our fiscal problems in our state. I'm also the only candidate up here who's ever publicly put out a platform or any kind of ideas to the public on how they're going to fix the state. My opponent has not done that. Since he's been in office, he's voted for tax increase after tax increase. We cannot tax our way out of this. It never has worked, and never will work. Over the past 40 years, we've had a legislature controlled by one party. We have a lagging economy, one of the highest tax burdens in the nation, and it's not working. We need to focus on fiscal stability. We need to focus on cutting our long-term costs and creating a better opportunity for our future generations. We need to focus on creating an environment in which businesses thrive. We need to focus on prioritizing our funding in our communities, not on special interests in Hartford. Only then will we turn around our economy. And it's so important because the economy is so many things. There's funding for programs. There's a roof over people's heads. There's low unemployment. There's stable family structure. There's low crime. There's high educational attainment. The economy should be our #1 priority. Help me be part of the change that we need in Connecticut to turn around our state once and for all. I want to thank everyone tonight. I want to thank Mr. Goldberg and the Political Action Committee. Thank you all. God bless you.
So thank you, candidates, for participating in this debate and for your candid statements.
Hi, my name is Scott Tui. I'm part of the Political Action Club, and I just want to give another thank you to our candidates, our moderator, our timekeepers, and custodians, everybody who helped set up this debate. I think it was wonderful, productive, and everyone got a good idea of what the candidates stand for. And I hope you will join us next Tuesday on October 30th for our next debate with State Senate candidates Beth